No, I haven't been moved up since like the fourth grade when I was in the back of the class.
Well, I was a teacher by trade, so I guess it's a good
I'm
move.
right next to the teacher.
This meeting of the State of Rhode Island Board of Elections will come to order. It is Tuesday, July 11th. It is 2:03 p.m. Madam Secretary, please read the roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chairwoman Madeira.
Here.
Member Bettenker.
Here.
Member Connors.
Here.
Member DeSimone.
Present.
Member Giacomoni.
Present.
Member Johnson.
Present.
Member Schultz.
Present.
Executive Director Robert Laposa.
Present.
Legal Counsel Ray McCarthy.
Present.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Item number 1 on the agenda, Chairwoman Diane Medeiros welcomes newly appointed members of the Board of Elections, Michael P. Connors and Randall L. Giacomoni. I'm honored to welcome our 2 newest board members to our Board of Elections today. Mr. Connors and Mr. Giacomoni were both sworn in on Friday by Chief Justice Paul Sattel, and we are delighted they are here and ready to begin their service. They both bring a wealth of experience as members of local boards in Cumberland and Cranston, and I know we all look forward to working with them. So welcome, both of you. Thank you. Item number 2, the board may discuss and vote to nominate and elect a new vice chairman to replace Vice Chairman Richard Pierce, who passed away on May 27th, 2023. Nominations are in order for the vice chair position. And I would like to start by nominating Mr. David Scholes for that position. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, do we have a motion to close the nominations?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. DeSimone. Do we have a second? Seconded by Mrs. Johnson. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I abstain.
You're abstaining. Mr. Scholes is abstaining from the vote. Okay, we shall take a vote. Voting for Mr. Scholes. Aye. Raise your hand, please. It is a unanimous vote for David Scholes to be our vice chair. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
You are
Appreciate
elected.
this.
Item number 3, Chairwoman Diane Medeiros will announce that the following legislation was passed. Senate Bill 742A and House Bill 5462A, and welcomes the inclusion of a liaison from the Secretary of State's office at Board of Elections meetings. And yes, those bills did pass, and among other things, it includes a provision that a liaison from the Secretary of State's office shall take part in our Board of Election meetings. And with the intention was to formulate communication between the Department of State and the Board of Elections. And those of you who have been here at these meetings for some time know that we have unofficially provided for this interaction. Certainly, I think Rob Rock has probably attended more meetings than I have as the chair of this board. So we're very, very pleased today to have Kathy Placencia, the Director of Elections, representing the Secretary of State's office. And we welcome you as well. I don't know if you want to say anything to start off.
Thank you. So congratulations to the new board members, Giacomoni and Connors. We look forward to working with you all and strengthening the relationship between the Secretary of State's office and State Board of Elections. And so I just wanted to mention that we are working on the 2023 legislation when it comes to 17-year-old voting. For the primaries, we're working on the logistics, and we're going to ensure that the CVRS is updated properly. So when once the law goes into effect in January of 2024. With regards to the liaison bill, we're here to assist with whatever questions the Board of Elections has. And I know that that relationship has always been open for many years. And like you mentioned, that Rob Rock has probably attended every single meeting.
Yes.
So now it's my turn. So, and we are providing the board staff with the e-poll book, RFP, and the ES&S contract as far as the procurement process. And we're here to assist with anything that, with the staff needs. And Dropbox legislation, we support the legislation that would allow voters to use the drop boxes starting at 35 days before the primary and general election. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very, very much. We appreciate you being here. Item number 4. The board may discuss and vote to approve the minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday, June 6, 2023. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Scholes. We have a second.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Bettenker. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, unanimous vote of the board. Item number 5, the board may discuss and vote to approve the minutes of the meeting held on Thursday, June 8th, 2023.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Scholes. Yep, seconded by Ms. Bettenker. Any discussion?
Madam Chair, I think I need to abstain. I don't believe I was present at that meeting.
Same here, I was not present.
Okay, so we have 2 abstentions. Okay. We have a motion to approve the minutes with the abstentions noted. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? It's a vote to approve. Item number 6. The board may consider additional public comments submitted in connection with a proposed regulation, disclosure of independent expenditures, electioneering communications, and covered transfers, and may vote to adopt the regulation. And I think we're going to hear from Mr. Mercatio on this matter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To my knowledge, we have received one additional set of comments from the ACLU. I have had a few discussions, the most recent of which was just today, where I would like to have the board continue this for 1 month so that I can have possibly another joint discussion between the ACLU and Common Cause, or them separately. But I think it would be possibly beneficial if I meet with them in an attempt to maybe reconcile some of the competing legitimate proposals that we have before us on some of the questions raised by the ACLU in its last correspondence.
Madam Chair, I'll make the motion to continue to our next monthly meeting. I do agree with council. I had an opportunity to look at what was submitted by the ACLU, and I think there are several of the points made are valid. I think we do need to modify based upon that.
Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. DeSimone. Do we have a second to the motion to continue this to the August 6th meeting?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Scholes. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, it's a unanimous vote to continue the matter. Item number 7, the board may discuss the 2023 election-related legislation, which was passed during the General Assembly session and signed into law. And I think we're going to hear from Mr. Reposer on that matter.
Good afternoon, members of the board. Again, congratulations to our 2 new board members and to our newly elected vice chair. In 2023, there were 85 bills introduced pertaining to Title 17 election and campaign finance laws. 50 were introduced in the House, 35 in the Senate, and there were 30 pairs of bills. 60 were introduced as companion pairs in both the House and the Senate. Of the bills the board introduced, 7 pairs, 1 in each chamber, of which 2 of the 7 passed. 4 of the pairs had 1 bill passed either in the House or the Senate, and 1 bill pairing never passed the House or the Senate. 68 of these 85 bills did not pass, which 18 were not passed in either chamber and 50 and did not pass. Of the 9 bills that did pass and became law this year, the first one was Senate Bill 0601 and House Bill 6033. This act would mandate that on each primary for the election of National Convention delegates and elections for presidential preference primaries, all public elementary and secondary schools would be closed. This bill was signed by the governor on June 19th. The second bill that passed was Senate Bill 0840 and House Bill 6185. This was a Board of Elections bill. This act would amend the election laws to change certain deadlines for declaration of candidacy for special federal elections, party disaffiliation for special federal elections, submission of nomination papers for special federal elections, and would change the deadline for the Board of Canvassers to certify certain signatures. This bill was signed by the governor on May 18th, 2023. The third bill, Senate Bill 0035A and House Bill 5055A, would allow individuals who had not reached the age of 18 to vote in party primaries as long as the voter will be 18 as the date of the general election. This bill was signed by the governor on June 19th, 2023. The fourth bill, Senate Bill 0130 and House Bill 5305, would mandate that on each primary for the election of national convention delegates in elections for presidential preference primaries, has already been signed, that was signed on May 1st, that all schools would be closed. House Bill 613A and 6240A would require unanimous vote of the local board of canvassers for the combination of voting districts for special elections, and would require a unanimous vote of the local board of canvassers for the combination of the voting districts for any primary, special election, or presidential preference primary. That was signed by the governor on June 22nd. This bill was introduced by the City and Town Clerks Association at the urging of the Board of Elections, because that bill would definitely help us, especially for all special elections, including the Congressional District 1, which we will be holding later this year. Senate Bill 0846 and House Bill 5962A would define accounts payable as credit extended by an outside vendor in the ordinary course of business and not as a campaign contribution. This act would also raise the minimum aggregate reporting to $200 per year and exempt the candidate from the minimum aggregate reporting requirement. This act would also raise the contribution limit for individuals and political action committees to $2,000 per year. This act would further include public financing for primary elections beginning with the 2026 election cycle, with reimbursement of the primary winner for campaign expenditures. Additionally, this act would prohibit public financing for any candidate with outstanding fines owed to the Board of Elections. And finally, this act would define the terms fair market value and usual and normal charge for goods and services for donated campaign expenditures. That bill was signed by the governor on June 27, 2023. Senate Bill 1010 and House Bill 6309 would change the primary date for the election of delegates to national conventions and for presidential preference primary from the fourth Tuesday in April to in 2024. That was signed by the governor on June 19th, 2023. House Bill 5718 would act to clarify the qualifications to vote in elections for the Kingston Fire District, extends to those residents of the district qualified to vote in the town of South Kingston elections. It would also remove all those sections addressing the use of water for fire district protection effective June 27, 2023. That concludes my report of all the bills that were introduced and the ones that actually passed and became effective as state law during the month of June.
Have any questions of Mr. Reposer at this point? Yes, Ms. Bettenker.
Bob, I'm assuming, well, I wouldn't want to assume, how many, do we know right now how many of these will need regulations?
I do not know that right
Okay.
off the top of my head.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Reposa. Appreciate the report. Item number 8. Executive Director Reposa will present proposed 2024 legislation to discuss and vote related to changes in Rhode Island General Law 17-20-22.1, drop boxes. Mr. Reposa, please.
On February 7th, the board voted to authorize the staff to submit to the General Assembly a bill to extend the period during which a voter may deposit their ballots into drop boxes from 20 days prior to the election to 35. Initially, the staff had sought a change of 30 days, but this was amended to 35 days at the request of the Secretary of State Elections Division in order for the start date not to begin on a Sunday. House Bill 6104 was introduced in the General Assembly by Representative Lauren Carson on March 3rd, and Senate Bill 0845 was introduced by Senator Frank Lombardi on March 29th. At the request of House leadership, a Sub-A for House Bill 6104 was created by the staff, changing the Dropbox timeframe back to 30 days prior to the election. The board approved the Sub-A at a meeting held on May 2nd, and the Sub-A was introduced in the House on May 5th. The Senate did not consider the Sub-A, and the original bill containing 35-day timeframe was passed by the full Senate on May 11th. On June 12th, while the staff was reviewing calendars for upcoming special elections, it was discovered that the 35-day timeframe would likely result in drop boxes for special elections being required to remain open at the close of the polls for the special primaries. This would conflict with two sections of 1722.1, which prohibits ballots from being placed in a drop box after the polls have closed. Specifically, in Section A, it states, at the close of the polls on Election Day, upon the last ballot deposited by any person in line at that time, a designated agent of the Board of Elections shall ensure that no other ballots are deposited in the drop box. In Section E of the same statute, it reads, each drop box shall not accept the deposit of mail ballots after the last person in line to deposit a ballot in that drop box at the time of the polls closed on the day of elections has deposited their ballots. For a special election, it is likely that the special primary will be held less than 35 days prior to the special election. The proposed legislation would require that the drop box be kept open at the close of the polls on primary day, thereby being in violation of two previous cited sections of the statute and creating the possibility that primary ballots could be deposited into the drop box after the deadline. For example, in the upcoming special primary for Forster Town Council and Cranston City Council Ward 6, on September 5th, the drop boxes would be required to be open to accept the October 3rd special election ballots on August 29th through October 3rd at 8 p.m. While Rhode Island General Law 17-20-22.1 and the rule and regulation on drop boxes would require the drop boxes to be locked and sealed on September 5th at 8 p.m. In the hope of salvaging this bill, the staff discussed the possibility of having the local board sign an affidavit attesting that they emptied the drop box at 8 p.m. However, that would conflict with sections of 17-20-22.1, which requires the Board of Elections to ensure that no ballots are accepted into the drop box after the close of the polls. And the only way to ensure this requirement would be to lock the drop box, as has been the requirement since the introduction of drop boxes in 2020. And as required under Section 1.6B of the board's rules and regulations filed with the Secretary of State's office entitled Rules and Regulations Establishing Vote by Mail Drop Boxes, which states, at 8 p.m. on Election Day, upon the last ballot deposited by any person at that time, the designated agent of the Board of Elections shall ensure that no other ballots are deposited in the drop box. Each drop box must be sealed and locked. The drop box's ballot slot opening should also be covered and locked to prevent voters from attempting to deposit ballots after the close of the polls on Election Day. The staff also discussed the possibility of requiring local boards to review video camera footage to determine if a voter deposited their ballot into the drop box after 8 p.m. The consensus was this would be an administrative burden on the local boards to investigate each instance when a voter had their ballot disqualified by the Board of Elections and yet claims to have dropped the ballot within the drop box prior to 8 p.m. There also existed the possibility that a third party could deposit many ballots into the drop box after 8 p.m., and it would be difficult to determine whose ballots were included in that quantity or if the local board had simply missed a voter's ballot when they emptied the drop box at 8 p.m. After much discussion, the staff was in agreement that the proposed legislation did not work in its present form and required modification to take into consideration the close time frame of special elections. The legal counsel for the House and the Senate were notified of the potential conflict, and they agreed with the staff's assessment. However, at that point, it was too late to obtain board approvals for submission of a sub-A, and the bill already had a substantial hurdle to overcome within the House and the Senate, having passed different versions of the same bill within the House bill requiring the drop boxes to be open 30 days prior to Election Day, and the Senate requiring 35 days. Unfortunately, it was determined that the bill should be revised and resubmitted during the 2024 legislative session. I have spoken with with sponsors, Senator Frank Lombardi and Representative Lauren Carson, and they both have expressed interest in resubmitting a revised bill in the next session, with it potentially being in effect prior to the April 2nd presidential preference primary. The staff has created a new draft legislation which is before you today and addresses the issue of the special election. This draft that you also have in front of you has been reviewed by our legal counsel, Ray Mercaccio.
Thank you, Mr. Reposa. So this, what we have before us is what the staff has determined would work as far as the legislation is concerned.
Based on what we know now, when that bill was originally changed to just go to 35 days, for 35 days works perfectly for statewide primaries and elections. It does not work for special elections in which there are names on the ballot, because a lot of our special elections the primary occurs 30 days prior to the election. We're required to open that box 35 days before, and I just explained all what we encountered as possible problems. The 35 days doesn't work. The proposed legislation that you have in front of you has been discussed thoroughly amongst ourselves, and because if the primary is on the Tuesday, 30 days prior to the election, at that point, then the Secretary of State's office has to create the ballots. So we have in here, subject to all of your approval or discussion, that the drop boxes would open at 20 days prior to the special election. This legislation does not change the fact that for statewide elections and federal elections, it remains at 35 days.
Understood. Board members have any questions of Mr. Reposa at this point? Mrs. Johnson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Bob, thank you. That's very helpful. And understanding all the issues at play here. In looking at the legislation initially versus the rules and regs, and then hearing some of the staff's potential solutions. I mean, first off, glad we caught it. Wouldn't want to have run into an issue. Wish that we caught it earlier. I know this was a bill that was unanimously approved by the entire board and an important one for voters. As the legislation reads, it does say that no one can vote or deposit in the Dropbox, but if you were considering surveillance to see, could we not have had an elections official pick everything up for those two communities at 8 p.m. and then anything that they found in the Dropbox the next day would not be counted? I guess I'm struggling with, pulling the entire bill when really where it says that they need to be locked is in the rules and regulations, which we have the ability to change. I mean, to me, again, with all due respect, I think this should have been a call for an emergency meeting if we still had time to see this legislation through. It's great to hear it's going to be reintroduced. I think it's really important that this passes, given the work that
We
went
do
into it. But I would, from a process standpoint, I would be interested to hear, your thought process, and appreciate the brainstorming of possible solutions. But this is something I would have liked to been made aware of before it was sort of a done deal. And I speak for myself.
And I apologize for that. I mean, it was at the 11th hour when this came to our attention that it didn't work. And again, it was too late because it had already was on the track and the session ended within 2 days. And they would have had to both pass it in both chambers. And when I spoke to the attorneys for the Senate and for the House, that they made that determination.
Yeah. Thank you. No, I appreciate that. And I think just moving forward from a process standpoint, I mean, we've had emergency meetings of the board that we've had to call for different sorts of issues. And, I know there's not, you're kind of acting on your feet, but this is something I think that would have been important to be, heard and have, an ability to problem solve by the entire board, because we could have, I think, made those changes in time. Thank you. Thank
Thank
you, Madam
you.
Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions of Bob at this point? Mr.
No,
DeSimone?
Madam Chair, I don't have any questions, but with regard to the bill itself, since it's not going in until the 24th session, I think it should be referred over to our subcommittee, because there may be some additional changes that come in now that it's going to be a brand new bill. Maybe some language changes that need to be tweaked other than what's here. We also have 2 new members, and I know that board has to be restructured. The subcommittee will probably need to be restructured because Dick is no longer here. So I would just suggest at this point, rather than voting on it, that we move it to refer it to a subcommittee.
So is that a motion,
That's in the
Mr.
form of a
DeSimone?
motion, yes.
So Mr. DeSimone moves to refer it to our legislative committee. Do we have a second to that motion?
I will second that.
Seconded by Mrs. Johnson. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It's unanimous.
Can I ask a follow-up question around the committee? So because this was my first year on the legislative committee, is there any, and I know we only met as a committee once, and then so I'm wondering if at some point we can make a better schedule for things?
My next suggestion was going to be potentially either on the August or the September agenda to come up with some type of meeting schedule.
I agree.
Because I think
Yeah.
we need to do that rather than wait until December, January. And since it's
Exactly.
only special elections this year, it should be fairly
Agreed.
easy to accommodate,
Yeah.
I would think.
So Mr. Reposa has made a note of that, I'm
That's
sure.
very true.
Thank you. Thank you both.
I could see him doing that even though I'm far away now.
I'm never going to hear the end of this, am
No,
I?
no, I Like
Okay.
I go to the vote.
Okay. Next item on the agenda The board may discuss and vote on a calendar created by the staff for the upcoming Coventry special referendum on October 3rd, 2023. Mr. Reposa.
On April 25th, the Coventry Town Council voted on a revised bond question to be voted upon at an upcoming Title 17 special referendum election. At that time, the Town Council voted on a recommendation of the Coventry School Building Committee to conduct a townwide special referendum on Tuesday, October 3rd, which the calendar that you possess indicates that date. Once the Board of Elections was notified by the Board of Canvassers, the Board of Election staff created the draft calendar you possess of events necessary to conduct this pending special election. The Board of Election staff and the Coventry Board of Canvassers agree on the draft calendar. The ballot question to be presented to the eligible voters states, an act authorizing the town of Coventry to issue not more than 25 million bonds and notes to finance construction, renovation, rehabilitation, repair, improvement, furnishing, and/or equipping of and/or additions to schools and school facilities throughout the town, subject to approval of state school housing aid at a reimbursement rate or state share ratio of not less than 49.2% for expenditures eligible for reimbursement by approved. The voters vote by choosing either approve or reject. The Board of Canvassers are estimating a 5 to 10% voter turnout for this special election, and I expect will be requesting to open one polling place in each of their 5 Coventry districts, which will be presented to you at the next board meeting to be held on Tuesday, August 8th. Additionally, the Board of Canvassers do not anticipate difficulties in obtaining poll workers to work at these selected locations. If the board does not have any questions regarding the draft calendar before you, I respectfully ask that the calendar be approved for a special referendum election to be held in Coventry on Tuesday, October 3rd.
And as you said, both the local board and the Board of Election staff collaborated on this calendar. Is
Yes,
that
we
correct? Any board members have any questions of Mr. Reposa at this point?
I move that we approve the calendar.
Mr. Scholes
for the
makes a
Coventry
motion
Special referendum.
to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Johnson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It's unanimous vote of the board. Item number 10, the board may discuss and vote on the polling location selected by the Board of Canvassers for Congressional District 1 for the primary to be held on September 5th, 2023, and the election to be held on November 7, 2023. Mr. Reposa.
The Congressional District 1 election and has the BOE staff working with the Board of Canvassers since February, when David Cicilline announced he would be stepping down. On June 23rd, the Board of Staff notified all 19 Boards of Canvassers that would be conducting this special election in Congressional District 1 of the criteria for them to begin looking for polls that they wish to open based on the recently passed legislation that would allow them to combine for the primary and also for the elections outside of the 3,500 maximum voters in a location. Some Board of Canvassers had selected prior to this date in anticipation of that legislation passing, while others were waiting for the outcome. As of this meeting today, there are 19 communities that make up Congressional District 1. Of those 19 communities equates to 195 normal precincts. With the legislation that was passed, the 19 communities have requested to open 91 of these polls. The Board of Elections, working with each of these communities, have reviewed the locations that they requested, the number of voters that are being assigned, the fact that the location selected offers equal distance for voters to travel within their communities. I will run down the list of the 19. In Barrington, they have 6 precincts. They have requested to open 3. Bristol has 8 precincts. They have requested to open 3. Central Falls has 7 precincts. They have requested to open 3. Cumberland has 14 precincts. They have requested to open 6. East Providence, 17 precincts. They have requested to open 4. Jamestown, 2 precincts. They requested to open 1. Lincoln has 11 precincts. They requested to open 7. Little Compton has 1 precinct. They have requested to open their 1 precinct. Middletown, 5 precincts. They have requested to open 2. Newport has 9 precincts. They have requested to open 3. North Providence has 13 precincts. They have requested to open 3. North Smithfield has 5 precincts. They have requested to open 2. Pawtucket has 28 precincts. They have requested to open 9. Portsmouth has 7 precincts. They have requested to open 4. Providence has 33 precincts. They have requested to open 20. Smithfield has 6 precincts. They have requested to open 2. Tiverton has 7 precincts. They have requested to open 4. Warren has 4 precincts. They have requested to open 2. And finally, Woonsocket has 12 precincts, and they have requested to open all 12. So again, Congressional District 1 making 195 precincts. And with the request from these 19 communities, we would be opening 91 for the primary and for the election to be held this year. If there are no questions of the board, I would.
Any
I
questions?
have just one
Mr.
question.
Scholes?
So Bob, of the 195 precincts, how many registered voters are in those 195 precincts?
So you have a list, a breakdown
Oh, but the total.
of all 195 precincts and what the precincts are, what the total voters will be when they do the combinations. I am going to tell you with a little bit of surprise, I do not have the total number of voters on this list.
Okay.
Knowing who created that list, I'm surprised it's not there.
You can get us that number,
I
though,
can
can't you,
get
Bob? Any other questions of Mr. Reposa? Yes, Mr. Jack Boney.
Just a question about, I noticed that some of them have approaching, like one's 9,823, is no concerns about the size of a particular precinct?
We did not, based on where it was being located.
Okay.
And when you look at that number, if it's a 9,000 total eligible voters in 2023, there, and we have a, let's say hypothetically you have a 40% turnout, which would then be 3,600 people. These locations are capable of handling that many voters, but a large percentage of those 3,600 voters now do early voting and mail ballots. So you don't have the number going to the polls that we had in years prior to
Okay.
2020.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions?
I just have one other question, Bob. I don't want to put you on the spot, but in Providence, it's sort of a split city, because half of it's in CD1, parts of it in CD2. So how many voting precincts are there in Providence in total? And of that, how many are in CD1?
So in Providence, Kathy, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
answer
I
that
believe, she can
Oh,
answer
that's
that
right.
very easily.
There are 82 voting precincts in the city of Providence. And I believe that 28 of them are in CD1,
33.
or 33.
33 are in CD1, the balance are in CD2.
Great,
So
thank
it's
you.
not a real
Thank you.
even.
This is what
Thank you,
the
Kathy.
devil is.
That's right.
Any other questions? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve the openings of the precincts as prepared.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Johnson, seconded by Mr. D. Simone. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, unanimous vote of the board. Item number 11, the board may discuss and vote on the polling location selected by the Board of Canvassers for Senate District 1 for the primary to be held on September 5th, 2023, and the election to be held on November 7, 2023. Mr. Reposa.
On June 28th, Providence Board of Canvassers met to approve the polls that they would like to open for the Senate District 1. It should be noted, on June 29th, the Board of Elections received Providence request. On July 10th, we received confirmation that their precinct that they had selected at their June 28th meeting, precinct 2802 Rudolph Tavares Community Center, would not be available as noted in their initial request, and they would like to combine those voters with precinct 2804 at the Da Vinci Center for the primary. The staff of the Board of Elections concurred with that, knowing that polling places in Providence are very hard to obtain, and that the Da Vinci Center is definitely large enough to move the 2802 polling place to 2804. There are 13 precincts that make up Senate 1. Of those that are in Senate 1, hold on one second. Five of them are also in CD1, Congressional District 1. So there's an overlap.
Mhm.
So they would be opening 5 different locations in addition to the 33 they previously requested for CD1. And the staff looking at those locations agrees with the locations that Providence selected for the Senate 1. Senate 1, CD1 kind of gets a little confusing, but it is what we have. And so they are asking to open the precincts in Senate District 1 that are outside of the numbers for Congressional District 1. And the staff has been in Providence several times, and they agree with the selection that was made by Providence.
Any questions, Bob? And I know I ask this every time, Bob, but we are making sure that the voters are aware that the polling locations where they may normally have gone are not going to be open, correct?
That has been our practice.
Okay.
That the local boards will put signage on the polls that they normally use, that it is not open for that election and where the voters would go for that day to cast a ballot.
Question really, do we know if some precincts also like send a mail notice? I think my parents in Central Falls got a notice like that once. Do you know if that's common practice in most?
That depends on the community,
Got
because
it.
that is a cost not borne by the BOE.
Oh, okay.
That
By
is,
each-
that is,
oh, wow.
that is a cost that is paid by the community.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a motion on item number 11?
I move that we approve the consolidation of these voting districts.
Moved by Mr. Scholl, seconded by Ms. Bettenker. Do we have any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It's unanimous vote of the board. Item number 12, the board may discuss and vote on the polling location selected by the Board of Canvassers for the Cranston City Council Ward 6 election to be held on October 3rd, 2023. Mr. Reposa.
On June 27th, 23, the Cranston Board of Canvassers met to approve the polls that they would like to open for this special primary and election that will be held for City Council Ward 6. The Board of Elections received that information on June 27th. There in Cranston for Ward 6, it is comprised of 4 polling places. The Board of Canvassers requested to open 2 of those 4 precincts. The staff, in looking at the selections that were made, agreed with Cranston's selection, and at this time, I would ask that you approve these 2 locations that will be used for this special in Cranston.
I
Any
think we should
questions?
defer to Commissioner Giacalone.
Do you have any questions or concerns?
I don't have any questions or concerns. Thank you.
Excellent.
But I will make a motion to approve as
Thank you.
presented.
Moved by Mr. Giacone, seconded by Mr. Di Simone. Any further discussion? Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, unanimous vote of the board. Item number 13, the board may discuss and vote on the polling location selected by the Board of Canvassers for the Foster Town Council election to be held on October 3rd, 2023. Mr. Reposa.
On April 11th, 2023, the Foster Board of Canvassers met to select the polling places for their upcoming election. The Board of Elections received this request from Foster on May 25th. Foster has 2 polling places, and they have requested to combine these polling places into one location. The one location can adequately support the combination, and the staff agrees with the Board of Canvassers selection. And I would ask that if you don't have any questions, that you would approve this request.
Any questions of Bob? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
Move we approve the consolidation of voting districts?
Moved by Mr. Schultz. Do we have a second? Seconded by Mr. Connors. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, unanimous vote of the board. Thank you, Bob.
You're very welcome.
Whole lot of information today.
There was.
Item number 14, the board may vote to meet in executive session pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 42465, subsection A4, and 17255, subsection A7I, to discuss and/or vote on possible violations of campaign finance laws and 4 campaign finance matters. Do we have a motion? Move to go into executive session by Mr. Schultz, seconded by Mrs. Johnson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, unanimous vote of the board. Item number 15, the board may vote to meet in executive session pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 42465, subsection A, subsection 2, to discuss and/or vote on litigation pending in Providence County Superior Court, captioned HSBC Bank USA versus Gail L. J. LaFond, Daniel Grizik, and Nancy Grizik, and the State Board of Elections, with a bunch of numbers, PM 2023-02636. Do we have a motion to go into closed session for that
I'll
purpose?
move to, second.
Moved by Mrs. Johnson, seconded by Mr. Di Simone. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, unanimous vote to go into executive session at 2:50 PM.
report out of executive session. The first is on Nicole LaBeouf in executive session, which was attended by all board members. Mr. Thornton provided a audit report regarding Ms. LaBeouf's campaign finance violations and recommended the adoption of a consent order. A motion was made by Mr. DeSimone, seconded by Vice Chair Scholes, to adopt the consent order. All voted in favor, none opposed. The second matter that is being reported out is on Deanna Garlington, board member DeSimone, recused from this matter. The remaining board members heard it and heard Mr. Thornton provide a summary of his audit report and the campaign activity and violations of Ms. Garlington for the period June 1, 2022 through March 31, 2023. He presented a consent order for approval. A motion was made by Vice Chair Scholes to approve the consent order, seconded by Board Member Johnson. All remaining members voted in favor. Again, Mr. DeSimone recused. The final matter that is being reported out from executive session is a matter of Jennifer Douglas. After hearing from Mr. Thornton, a motion to refer the matter to the Attorney General for further action was made by Board Member Giacavone and seconded by Mr. DeSimone. All voted in favor, none opposed. And that's it, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Macascio. And it should be noted for the record that Mr. DeSimone did participate in all of the other executive session matters, but had to leave promptly after that. Okay, we don't have any other business to discuss this afternoon. Do we have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Johnson, seconded by Mr. Scholes. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous vote. We are adjourned at 4:01.